This story happened to another. He did not learn, and all the events were long. Some time ago I met a rather crazy girl. She herself was not very balanced, but with obvious ambitions. After some time, she had an obsession to marry me. I, at that time, already understood that nothing good would come of our relationship. We tried in every way to break up with her. And then I began to constantly listen to her stories of conversations about how she goes to different healers and witches in different villages with the sign to bewitch me. All this news did not cause anything in me, except grins and cheerful skepticism. The end of our affair happened after this rather quickly. I, having come to visit her once again, saw her thinner, haggard, with an exhausted expression on her face. I stayed with her for a while. Our conversation was not going well, and I was getting ready to go home. It was getting late. It had long since gotten dark outside. And then, when I was already lying in my clothes in the doorway, she seemed to break down. She began to ask me to stay, paying attention to the strange rustlings and sounds that she hears in her apartment at night, to the incomprehensible reddish glow in the kitchen, which she periodically sees during the full moon. At this point I could not stand it any longer and, in rosy tones, showed her that everyone knew about her antics with love spells and all this nonsense, that she had lost her mind because of this, and that everything was over between us. She somehow calmed down suspiciously quickly and said that she was not going to keep me by force. I had already opened the front door and was about to go out when she asked me about my last small decision. Internally no longer expecting anything good, I only asked out of politeness how I could help her. She started talking quickly, afraid that I would leave without listening to the end, that one old healer gave her water in the village, and that she was afraid to even go near it. She asked me to just pour out the water and throw away the jar. I grinned at her latest invention and went to the kitchen. I didn't even ask what kind of water it was and why she needed it. I took the 3-liter jar she indicated from the windowsill and poured it into the sink, put the jar on the stairwell. As I was leaving the apartment, I heard her muttering something after me. Deciding not to stop and not to turn around, I got into the elevator and left, telling her goodbye, that when she saw the 7 gnomes in her kitchen, she could safely leave me to help. Several months passed. We stopped communicating completely from that time, and I had already begun to forget this whole unpleasant story. One autumn, my friends and I went to the lake to go fishing. The evening was clear and warm. The mirror-like surface of the lake was framed by a dense pine forest. In places, near the reflection of the setting sun, birches, rare for this landscape, flared up with a yellow flame. In general, a complete idyll. We smoked fish and had a cultural rest. I will immediately stipulate that 2 of our company were teetotalers, so it will not work to write off everything as a mass alcoholic hallucination. So, it was already after midnight. A huge moon like an overhang yellow ball brightly illuminated the lake and the boat pier. After another portion of smoked fish and toasts, everyone felt like great fishermen and, despite the fact that there is practically no bite at this time, a friendly crowd went fishing to the pier. At the same time, everyone took long fishing rods and went to the very edge of the pier to fish for carp, which requires depth. I took a short rod, literally 2 meters long, an ordinary bamboo one, and stood at the very beginning of the pier to catch minnows near the shore. There were no trees on the shore near the pier, a clean large clearing. I fished, peering into the dark waters of the lake, periodically raising the rod up to change the bait. And then, once again raising the rod up, I heard the noise of wings. Quickly raising my head, I saw a huge white owl, which was gliding right at me. The owl was about 1 meter tall, well, at least that's what it seemed to me, and stubbornly aimed at me. I did not have a knife or a gun with me. After all, we came to fish. So I began to shout at it, waving a thin bamboo rod. The owl, having made a small circle, began to dive at me again. At my cries, fortunately the pier was not very long. Our whole company came running and began waving their fishing rods and screaming just as intensely to scare the owl away. It made another circle and flew towards the forest. After the incident, we went back to the table to share our impressions. At that moment, the gamekeeper, whom we had invited to our table the evening before, arrived. Having heard our story, he began to explain to us, as if we were little children, that there are no snowy owls in our area, and the few that are there never reach such sizes. When he left, he advised us not to drink too much alcohol, otherwise we would also start chasing away polar bears with fishing rods. Everyone laughed, and our spirits rose. But then I started having sharp pains in my stomach, so strong that I asked to be taken home immediately. I decided that I had simply been poisoned by something in nature, so I swallowed painkillers at home and fell asleep. When I woke up, I realized that the pain had only gotten worse. I had to go to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with appendicitis. The doctors cheerfully assured me that the operation was trivial and advised my friends to call in an hour to find out about my health. As my friends later told me, they called for more than 6 hours. My condition was critical. As soon as they started operating, they discovered peritonitis, and during the operation my heart stopped. So it was a miracle that I didn't give up my soul to God. The doctors told me when I was discharged that I had a strong guardian angel, but I was literally born a second time. Of course, I would like to tell you about the glowing tunnel, the feeling of unearthly joy, etc., but I will disappoint you. Just as I fell asleep after the anesthesia, I woke up only after the operation. But the intrigue of the situation did not end there. Later, I learned that my friend, about whom I wrote at the beginning of the story, fell seriously ill at about the same time, and doctors diagnosed her with a terrible disease, leukemia. I do not know her further fate, but I received indirect confirmation of one of my hypotheses completely unexpectedly. In general, I am skeptical about supernatural phenomena, although I do not categorically deny their presence in our lives. So, during a medical examination, they found a small umbilical hernia, but since after the operation I described, anesthesia was contraindicated for me in the near future, my friends almost forcibly dragged me to a gypsy healer they knew. I immediately told her that I did not believe in her superpowers, and came only because my friends insisted. She told me that my faith or lack of faith did not affect her treatment, and began to make some kind of gypsy spell on knives, drawing some circles, squares, triangles on my stomach. As if in passing, she told me that a death curse ritual had recently been performed on me, and I had miraculously survived. I told her that I could have made the same conclusion myself, looking at the fresh scar across my entire belly. But then she began to describe the old woman who performed the ritual and the girl who approached her. I won't hide the fact that the similarity between the girl she was describing and my friend was frighteningly accurate. She also said that since the ritual had failed, the curse would return to the one who ordered it. I never went to see this gypsy again, although she invited me again to tell my fortune. By the way, the doctors did not find a hernia during the next examination. There's no getting away from this fact. It's confirmed by my medical record. As for the curse, I still can't say anything for sure. Maybe it really is a curse that has affected some dark forces, or maybe it's a fatal coincidence.